What's up guys, Andrew Baina here, and on today's video we are going to be taking a look at the brand new plugin by Neural DSP. This is the Powered by Omega Granophyre plugin. Before we get into the specs of the plugin and playing around with the different sounds and settings, first and foremost I'm going to show you guys what this thing sounds like in a full mix as always. Check it out. Now that you guys have heard how this plugin sounds in a full mix, I want to go over how I got these tones. First and foremost, the guitar I was using is a Precision Guitar Kit's M7. So this is a guitar kit that I made and finished. It's got a Seymour Duncan Jupiter and Sentient pickup. It's a 7-string. It's tuned to drop G sharp using 10 to 62 Ernie Ball Cobalt strings. That's pretty much all there is to it. It's got a basswood body, Pilliman ebony neck, and a Wenge or however you say that neck. I do also want to note that there are some leads that are in the background of this song, some lead guitars, but those actually were not this plugin. That's why they're kind of buried in the background and not really audible, because that's not really the focus of this video, as you will see in a second why that is. So we're going to be focusing on the rhythm guitar tone, which is really where the Granophyre plugin shines in my opinion. So the Granophyre plugin is a collaboration between Neural DSP and Powered by Omega. It is an exact copy of the Powered by Omega Granophyre amp, which is a 100-watt single channel amp head. It was originally called the Iridium, but they recently renamed it earlier this year to the Granophyre. So if you're looking at Powered by Omega's website, you're going to be wanting to look at the Iridium for now, unless they change the name on their website as well, in which case it will also be called the Granophyre. And if you're somehow unfamiliar with Neural DSP, they are responsible for making, in my opinion, the best guitar plugins at the moment. I've been using their plugins pretty much exclusively since they first came out, which was a little over a year ago now, with the first one being the Fortin Nameless plugin. So the Fortin Nameless has usually been my go-to for rhythm guitar tones still to this day, even though that was the first one they released. I just always really resonated with that one personally. But I think that this one might be my new go-to, honestly. So unlike the last few Neural DSP plugins, which were full suites called the Archetype suites, where basically it gave you like a bunch of effects like reverbs, delays, overdrives, all that, this one is much more stripped down and it really only does one thing per se. It just really focuses on that super aggressive rhythm guitar tone. Of course, you can dial back the gain and get some other tones as well, but that's how I was using it in the context of this video at least. So with all that being said, let's check out the plugin and go over what's going on in it. So first and foremost, when you open it up, you're going to see this page, which will show you what the amp head looks like. Again, this is exactly what the Granophyre head looks like, as you can see on Powered by Omega's website. So you've got your gain knob, you can switch between high and low gain. You got your bass, mid, treble for EQ settings. You have your level. You also have a voice switch, which essentially changes where the targeted mid is for your mid dial here, if that makes sense. So basically, it changes where the mid frequency shift is on the knob. You also have your master volume, and then you have your depth and detail knobs, which are kind of like a presence knob split in half. And then of course you can turn the plugin on and off by clicking active power if you so choose for some reason. It also has a tuner down here, as all Neural DSP plugins now have. So that's pretty much all that's going on in this main page. If we go to the left, you'll see that it also has one pedal in this particular plugin. This is the Plumes pedal by Earthquaker Devices. This is essentially a Tube Screamer-like pedal. So it's got your typical level, tone, and gain knobs that you would see on pretty much any Tube Screamer pedal, but it also has a mode switch where you can switch between 3 different modes. Next up, if we move on to the right, we got an EQ section. So this is the same as any other Neural DSP plugin. So I didn't do too much here. I pretty much do a huge low cut because I like my bass guitars to sit there, so I just get rid of it completely. And also at the 4 kilohertz range where you get some kind of nasty trebly sounds, I did a little cut there, but everything else I left pretty much unchanged. Next up, we got the speaker cabinet settings, and this also looks pretty familiar as all Neural DSP plugins have this. You've got a bunch of different mic options. You can also change the position, the distance, the level, the pan of each mic. You can have 2 mics at once. Lots of cool options here, but I left mine pretty bare bones, just leaving it as the Dynamic 57. And pretty much left everything at standard because I already liked how it sounded. So there's one feature that I haven't mentioned yet. If you notice on the bottom here, there are these different amp tubes. Normally with Neural DSP plugins, you can switch between different cabinets on the bottom, but in this case, they didn't give you that option, but they did give you the option to switch your different power tubes, which is pretty cool. I'm a digital amp guy, so I've never personally messed around with real amps, so it was really cool for me to actually hear how big of a difference tubes made in the sound of an amp. I kind of just never realized before because I've never really owned one and never really played around with tubes. Okay, so now that I've gone over all the specs with you guys, I'm basically just going to play back that main riff from the playthrough, and I'm just going to play with some settings and show you guys how it sounds when you altered the settings, of course. So we're going to start off with the exact rhythm tone that I was using. This has no post-processing, it's all done within the plugin, and it sounds like this. So pretty cool. I really like that sound personally. Of course, I also had it double tracked, so there's a left and right guitar, but for this instance, for the sake of you guys being able to hear it clearly and concisely, it's just the one guitar, pan center, easy. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna play that riff once more, and I'm gonna go around and play with the settings of the amp first. Okay, so that was a little sample of what the EQ and the gain settings do, as well as that voice switch that I was talking about earlier. Now we're just going to play that one more time and play around with the depth and detail knobs a little bit. Okay, and last but not least, we're going to play that riff one more time and cycle through the tube settings on the bottom so you guys can hear how much of a difference that those make. Okay, now that I've shown you guys pretty much all of the amp settings, we're going to move over to the pedal section and play around with this Plumes pedal by Earthquaker Devices. I'm going to show you guys what that sounds like right now. So as you can hear, it's pretty much what you would expect from a tube screamer with the exception of that mode setting, which is actually pretty interesting. Again, similar to the voice switch over on the amp, it seems to kind of give you a different mid-range. I personally really liked the third mode. I found that the second one was a little too low end of the mid-range, I guess, if you will, whereas the third one gave it a nice boost in the top end, which I actually really liked. Moving on to the EQ section, I feel like this is pretty self-explanatory, but we're going to go through it just in case you guys want to hear. So I'm going to turn all these EQs back to the default, and we'll go ahead and play with those. Alright, awesome. And then now, last but not least, we're going to move on to the speaker settings, and I'm just going to show you guys what it might sound like with some different mic settings. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to reset my tone to the same one it was in the beginning, and let's play around with the speaker settings. Okay, cool. And last but not least, as I mentioned earlier, you can enable two mics at the same time if you want to combine two different mics' sounds, and that can provide some interesting results, and it sounds something like this. Alright, so that's all I'm going to do in terms of the speaker settings, but of course you can get crazy with these. You can also actually import your own custom IRs if you want to use your own impulse responses rather than the provided ones. I personally don't do that, but I know there are tons of people out there who are obsessed with impulse responses, so if that's you, good news, you can load them in here very, very easily. Okay guys, that's going to be all for this video. If you are interested in learning more about this plugin, in case there's anything that I didn't mention, there's going to be a link in the description below, as well as the pinned comment, where you can find out everything you need to know about this plugin over on Neural DSP's website. I also want to give a huge shout out to all my Patreon members whose names are on the screen at this point in time. If you guys are ever interested in getting a shout out on the screen, audio downloads, or STEM downloads, you can find all of that over on my Patreon page, which is also going to be linked in the description below. That's all for today's video. Hopefully you guys like this plugin as much as I do. I know that, like I said earlier, it's probably going to become my new main go-to for rhythm tones. I really, really like it. Even though it doesn't have the extra effects pedals like the delays and reverbs that some of the other archetypes have, it's still a fantastic plugin. And I'm sure if you wanted to, you can maybe even add your own reverb plugin like after the amp sim, and it would sound essentially the same. So that's another option for you if you are kind of missing those features. And of course, I also want to note that as with other Neural DSP plugins, they are known to update them with new features, new pedals, new effects, so keep that in mind as well. But yeah, that's all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Big thank you to Neural DSP for sponsoring this video. That's all I got to say. I'll see you guys next time.